The moment that I realized something changed was the moment that I fainted. So I stood up to get off the train and I just collapsed. I fainted.
This is Lean Into Lead, raw conversations, real leadership, real responsibility. I'm Trevor Muir. Let's jump in. Welcome, Gem.
Thank you very much. Hello.
Nice. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. It's very rainy in the UK, but it's a good day.
Yeah. You're my first international guest, so I'm super excited about this. Onto the show here, share about leadership in life and a bit about your journey and who you are and what you are, and very, very inspirational. And I'll get into the fact that you're an author and a CEO and run a successful business. But, I always want to ask, what makes a person, decide to not just take a traditional path, like jump from, you could go and get a job that would pay you very, very well and have the benefits and all of the security of that. And what gives you, what makes a person like you decide to go and do what you do?
That's such a good question. Such a good question. And I think for me, what you call a growth mindset, or you need speed. You need rapid change. You've got evolution and growth, and you're growing faster than the role. And that role can be the role that you're employed to do, or it can be the role of your identity. When you're always in growth mode, because you're always learning. I've always been an avid learner, since a child. So I'm always learning, I'm evolving, and then I find something new. I want to do that. I want to do that. That'll be fun. So it's partly excitement, partly evolution, and always having that appetite for just constant consuming knowledge, a constant kind of appetite for learning stuff, breaking stuff down, learning stuff, evolving. Yeah, in a nutshell.
Yeah. Did you start with a traditional kind of path? Did you start off, in an office? Do you have an MBA?
So my first proper job, it wasn't really a proper job. It was in fitness. So I was jumping around the studio, teaching people body combat and body pump and just fitness. So I was always on a high. Endorphins were high all the time. You get that hit, don't you, of dopamine when you're working out. And then after that, one of my clients was actually a paramedic, and I was looking for more. I'd learned everything I could learn in the human body, muscles and bones. I was it's not enough for me. I need to learn something else. So my client, he was a first responder, and he said, why don't you try the ambulance service? You'll be able to be on the road. Every day's a new day. And that was true. You'll always be fresh, you'll always be challenged, and you have to think on your feet. And I'm okay, that sounds like it's me. My sister wanted to be a paramedic. I didn't, but there's an open day. You have to go and sit through this assessment center. You do a fitness test, which is fine for me, a fitness test, a math test, English test, and a driving test, which I struggled with, but I managed to pass somehow. And then you did a panel interview. So luckily for me, it was me and 50 other people, and 2 or 3 of us got accepted to be trainee technician in the ambulance service in Shropshire. So I tried that for a bit. And again, it was almost coming from a health background to then go into a service job like that, where contrast was just phenomenal. You go from the endorphins and the high to the, complete opposite. People are dying and you're doing what you do, right? So that wasn't the issue. It was the environment for me. It was working in the NHS system, and nothing was moving, and nothing was, I needed change. So I decided to leave the ambulance service, pack my bags, tell my mum, I'm going to a different city. I'm going to London. She's like, what? I've already signed up for uni. I literally told her, and then I just went three weeks later, and she had a mini heart attack. I tried the agency world. In the end, I had to have my own business. I had launched my own company, a PR agency called Upfront PR, and then a little mini marketing agency, a copywriting, because I just need the flexibility to know what needs to be done, and then I've got the energy to go and do it. And right now it's changing, that needs doing. And I needed that flexibility. So I did try and have a few jobs, proper jobs, but I just found that I fell into turnaround programs. So I'd go into a marketing firm or a company, the marketing team or it was a bit broken. The marketing department wasn't performing. They'd bring me in to help them to reshape the marketing department. I would then get bored after a year, set it up, make it stable, get bored, need a new challenge. And I was jumping year after a year to different roles. Then I realised I got headhunted to go to the Home Office in London for a change in communications role. Then I realised, actually, I've already been doing this pattern, which is changing organisations or changing departments. And then I fell into change and transformation. I've done that on the side as a consultant, as well as run the company that you know about.
Yeah. And so, amazing. And and very entrepreneurial, and you have tons of energy. And I know that you're out, having a positive impact on the world. Was there a time, you go through the kind of the normal saying, like, I'm just going all in on a business. And when did you make that decision? And what was sort of the catalyst for that? I'm actually all in on this.
I think that comes when I was trying to run in parallel for years. So for the last 10 years or so, I would be running some consultancy gigs, and then on the side, teaching yoga, coaching clients, doing sound baths, sound healing, retreats for like high and like the very senior people across government or whatever. So I was doing lots of side projects, and I felt like I was spinning too many plates. So then I had to decide, this is the only way it's going to get off the ground is to actually focus on the one thing. And I think the one thing it's almost like an affirmation that I tell myself. Like, what's the one thing today that I need to achieve? The big thing, the one thing.
Yeah.
Because I can just have 20 parallel projects running at the same time and not sleep or forget to eat, where I teach wellness and well-being. So I have to make sure that I practice what I preach. So I think now I've kind of just tried to really rein it all in a little bit and just focus on, so what's the strategy behind the direction, rather than just going scattergun and just going after all of it.
Yeah, well, you're very ambitious, and you have an incredible skill set, so you can do a lot of stuff. So you made the jump and you go into business. Was there a time ever where you were like, this is harder than I thought? You faced the challenge that you were that made you question your decision on starting your own business?
I think every flexion point before you jump to the next level, it gets hard. And I think almost like a relationship, you have, it jumps through various different inflection points or growth areas. Most people give up at that point, but it's almost asking you to ask the bigger questions, or ask a different question, or ask the right question. And often what you're doing, you're running around going, what am I missing? What am I missing? And eventually you'll either speak to somebody like a mentor, or you'll speak to somebody randomly in the gym or in the pub or wherever, and just penny will drop, and that's what I need. And often it's, you need more people, you need support, you need structure, you need, you can't do it all on your own. And when you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to do everything, you have to release and relinquish a little bit of trust in others to be able to then help you and not only share the responsibility, but share the successes as well. And I think when you rapidly change as much as I do, for me, that was the challenge, saying, can I really work with somebody, and can they work at the speed that I want to work at? And is that okay if they don't? So I think it's the human aspect to doing the thing that often is, with any change program as well, is often the challenging part of any success.
So how do you manage that? Because I think that's important, and especially a lot of folks start off and they're solopreneurs. They quit their job, they're good at something, they have a specific skill, and they go out. And I haven't talked to anybody yet who hasn't faced the challenge, or multiple challenges, and had that day where they wake up and they're like, oh my God, I might have screwed up. Like, why did I quit my job? Or I don't know what I'm doing. And I've got a lot of experience in business, and there's often days I'm like, I don't know if I actually know what I'm doing still to this day. But how do you really manage that as a solopreneur how did you to actually be like, okay, how do you integrate help into a business?
Find people. You have to find people that are better than you, have the similar attitude, similar values match as you, similar work ethic, similar, I guess it's commitment to the thing that you're trying to do, and be in it as much as you are, excited about it as much as you are. If you find your twin in business, or somebody who mirrors they have strengths in you where you don't, or they do stuff that you don't enjoy doing, you find your opposite, you find your partner or partners, and I think it works. It's interesting. I mean, I've gone through business partners and it hasn't worked out. Then I've done the other kind of pattern where I'm hiring people as and when I need them. And that sometimes works well because there's less commitment, but then there's the project and the speed there and there's momentum. So they know there's a finish line. And I think it depends how you manage people. When there's complacency and they get bored, performance goes down. So it's actually, how do I choose the right person initially? How do we have the right match? It's almost like you're dating a business partner. It's like dating. You're going to be working together probably more than you're going to see your partner, right?
Yeah.
And your employees, you're going to make sure that you complement each other on skill level, on a personality level, on a values level. There's so many levels and layers to us as individuals. You just don't, it's not about the CV. There's so much more that goes beyond the CV when you're actually trying to hire people in.
So interesting. And this really is what you do. You help people to go below the surface and to do the stuff. And so was there a moment in time where you were like, I need to start doing some more inner work? I know you're very fit and you're into the fitness and wellness, but was there a time where you're like, hey, something isn't aligned here, or I need to, like, something isn't feeling right, in spite of the fact that you've obviously been very successful, but did you wake up one day and be like, ooh, something's missing, or it felt different? Or
all the time. There's different things that come up. So there's a period of time where you go, everything's calm, everything is good. And then bam, I don't feel right, there's something off. So I've learned to understand now. Well, let's start from the beginning. So initially I had no self-awareness. So what I mean by that is I was conscientious, but that's different from self-awareness. So I worked really hard in businesses, for the first 15 years. I got to about 30, did really well, but I didn't do any inner work. Didn't really know what inner work was. I read The Monk That Sold His Ferrari and The Alchemist and all those amazing books.
Yeah, I did too.
I just loved them. They were like entertainment to me. I didn't really know where they were pointing to, what it was all about. So when I was at the Home Office, I did actually have a burnout. And that was my point where I went from only looking externally to actually there's a whole new world inside, which I had no idea about. So I studied, actually the first thing I studied was A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles, which is almost like, I think there's two ladies, a guy and a woman, who wrote it. And it's a download, quite spiritual. It's like the new Bible almost. So I did that course. It's like 365 days every day. And it almost like resets your brain, it resets your mind, where you delabel things. So when you and I are looking at each other now, I'd go man, woman, right? But you delabel everything. So nothing, so your brain almost, it's just like reborn in a way. It's really strange, but it happens automatically. And then after that, I studied like neuroscience. I went down the neuroscience route, social and cognitive neuroscience, and did find a bit more about the brain and how the brain operates, and the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and all of that stuff, which is great. And then I was on that game of like, my ambition for the external world became the same ambition for the internal world. So I dug and I went down, lifted up every bonnet of every kind of spiritual modality there was out there, and training in everything. So from like Reiki to angel healing to literally everything, to like plant medicine stuff, just because it was fascinating. And I was like, where's the oldest book? I need to go really back in time. Then I started to study the Vedas, the original texts. And then I studied yoga and got into the yoga and the whole lifestyle behind, the 8 limbs of yoga, like Patanjali, and that kind of understanding. So I think my burnout sent me down a different path, and now it's kind of coming together again. So I kind of did business. Then it was like internal, and now it's almost like an integration. And that's where the last phase almost of the book, in the alignment phase. I know we've not spoken about it at the moment yet. Undressed, Awaken and Align. The alignment phase is like collapsing of the inner and outer together, like the integration piece.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you actually, you're one of the few people I've ever met who are like, and I think this is a good time, and I'm glad you referenced the book. So the book is Undressed, and I'll let you explain it a little bit more. So what was the reason or the premise, or what was the catalyst that made you be like, hey, I need to put this thing into a book? And I'm sure, like, what were the steps you took? Because I know this is really a lot about sort of your journey of life and the things that you were doing. And I don't mean to paraphrase here, so correct me if I'm wrong. So what was the moment that you realized that, hey, something has to change? Like, if you can be even, like, there was this day that was, like, I woke up, and then what were the things that you started to do? You've talked about some of it, but was the catalyst for Undressed? And then let's have a conversation about that.
So the moment that I realized something was the moment that I fainted when I was pregnant on the train going into my consultancy role in the Home Office. So I was on the train, on my normal commuter train, and all hot and sweaty, wearing my military style coat, and I got really just like, oh, something doesn't feel right. So I stood up to get off the train and I just collapsed. I fainted.
Wow.
And when I came back round again, rushed to the hospital because I was the doctors because I was pregnant, and they said you've basically had a burnout. Your nervous system is fried, emotionally, mentally, physically. You're kind of like, Dan, I'm like, how have I got to this point? Like, I was such a trier. And what I mean by that is I was exercising, I was working really hard, I was trying to make everybody happy. I was like, I'm trying so hard. Great. So that was my first time that I collapsed on the train. And I talk about that in the book. That was the moment where I thought, I had like a Britney Spears moment, and I do say that I went, oops, I've done it again. That was the kind of the words that rang true to me. So I pushed too hard, I pushed my body too much. And you can't say that I was partying hard and playing hard because I was pregnant, but I was training hard in the gym and working hard, and then probably not eating as well and looking after my nervous system. Didn't even really know about the nervous system and all of that. Even though I trained in the ambulance service, you don't really go into the depths of nervous system regulation and what all of that means. That was the moment. And then one of the first things I started doing straight away was journaling. And I talk about this all the time. I don't even know how I came across even the term journaling. I don't know why, I just started writing. And in those days, it was almost like, I'll show you, I had the A5 version of these books. I've got so many of them. And it was all handwritten. And it was just streams and streams and streams of just stuff. I didn't read it afterwards. I just wanted to write and get it all out. And I just realized that every time I wrote, I felt better afterwards. So I did that for a few days, or actually I think 88 days or something. And then I was like, oh, there's something in this. And then I started meditating. Didn't do breath work until breath work was probably one of the latter things that I did. I didn't really understand the importance of the breath and the nervous system. And then nervous system regulation is like the final thing that I did. Kind of that's the strand between everything is the nervous system and the gateway. But I was learning about, brain waves and stuff like that. So I'd say journaling first, then it was meditation. And I went to some amazing places during my meditations. And then I was doing some homework online. I came across Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I'm sure you know about, but he was 13 years younger when I first came across him. He wasn't this big, the big guy that he is today. I think he was just starting out. I read one of his books, and then I was like, right, I need to learn more about neuroscience. So then I studied with the Neuro Leadership Institution in Australia when I was pregnant as part of my burnout recovery.
I love how you're like, okay, well, I got to figure this out. And you start with journaling, and then all of a sudden you're becoming an academia. Like you're actually, and that, I think there's a pattern there with you, which is awesome. It's like, okay, now I'm going to do this. I am going to learn all about it, and you're going to become a specialist in it. And I think that's incredible. And especially with what you do and what you offer to the world now. And certainly with, the makeup of the book, I'm sure that it helped tremendously, because you're not just coming at it, I know, from just the personal experience, but you also have a lot of structure and theoretical evidence to back up a lot of what you share in the book. So there's a moment where, and I don't know if this is right, but there was a moment where, you realized you were undressed, or that you needed to get undressed, maybe is the better way. And it's interesting to me, like you were very, very successful, and you still are, but you had that moment where the burnout caused you to collapse while you were pregnant. And I think that so many people, and especially leaders and those folks who just have this kind of extra ambition in life to go out there and do something incredible. I had my moment on a bathroom floor that I've shared with you before, where it was really a lot of the same thing. And that was, I often talk about how the worst day of my life became the best day of my life. Like it was my darkest day, but it was a catalyst for change that forced me to go on a new journey to what you have talked about. You go from there till you start to do this work, you go and learn about neuroscience. And when did you start to incorporate it, and how did you start to incorporate it all, not only into your life, but into your leadership philosophy? And how did you take it into businesses?
Yeah. So my first company that I started after, I had a few consultancy names, so frameworks for my consultancy work. But then the first coaching company that I had was Fast CEO. And that was really working with startup founders, because I was like, when I worked for the Home Office, I was in a capacity of a program and portfolio management, where when you're a program or a portfolio or a project, you're basically like a startup organization. You have no SOPs or you have no processes yet. You've got an idea and you've got a goal and you've got a budget and you've got some people, but you're trying to pull it all together and get some minimal viable product and build a thing and sell the thing and get buy-in for the thing and make them. Yeah. So I was like, a product or a program is basically a company. So when I was thinking about who can I serve when I got my coaching qualification, you go through who's my target audience. I was like, it's tech people, because I worked in tech programs, so any techies, which would obviously be tech startups. So I was coaching tech startups around different things, actually, not just the leadership side, although the soft skills and the culture was really important because they were technologists and brilliant at technologists, but they were probably 23 and have no life experience, right? Like, they were brainy and they were clever at what they did in terms of their skill stack, but the people stack, they didn't know what an emotion is or how to lead from the heart or have empathy and communicate so people understood and clarify and all the stuff that comes natural to many of us. So I started around that, and then I went quite deep, actually. We talked about a lot of the time I found my clients had an overactive mind. Most intelligent people do have an overactive mind because their mind never stops. So I was processing something. And if you don't give it an idea to chew and process, it will chew and process something else. It works at that speed. A lot of the work that I did with my startup founders was also around the nature of the mind and understanding not their thinking, but how their mind thinks holistically, almost became very meditative for them, which ironically got them into a flow state so they could think about that one idea and go deep with it, or have an insight, or, they had an empath because they were just so spiraling at the one level of consciousness. You would bring them up and out and they had more data that they could actually synthesize, and then bam, the idea came in. So that was my first coaching practice, which was Fast CEO. On the side of Fast CEO, I had my own other company, which was almost for any other person that's not a technologist. And that company was really around the yoga in the community, or sound bowls in the community and all that kind of stuff. But then I collapsed them both together. So now my company, Gem Dentith Global, is a bit of an amalgamation of both. I'll have my core audience, which is leaders, but then I'll also take on smaller cohorts of ambitious individuals who haven't quite landed yet with their purpose and structure around them that needs to make them the best version of them that they can be in this lifetime.
I have a passion for helping, founders, young entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, but I also have a lot of experience. I really like working with sort of more senior leaders, and not necessarily, sometimes it's business and structure, but oftentimes it's about, you have success on the outside, like you had talked about, and you have the money in the car and the business, but you're dying on the inside. And you found a way, it sounds like, to sort of get a bit of both of that, where you can go in and you can help businesses, obviously, to structure, to scale, and build amazing cultures. But you found a way to also work with some folks who aren't there yet. And you'll help them avoid so many landmines in their life, like so many.
I think one of the key questions that you always have to ask yourself, no matter how high you are in the organization, how high and how much you've achieved in life, externally, materially, is where suffering comes from. The mind all works the same way for every single person in the world, right? So unless you have, a condition, but for the majority of us, it works the same way. And so you could be at the top of your game, you could be at the bottom of your game. It's the suffering is still available to all of us, which is a human condition.
It's true.
So you just eliminate the kind of the additional noise, and then you'll be good.
The suffering's available to all of us. I love that. I'm going to steal that, by the way. I think I remember, and I don't know who said it, but I've heard it lots. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. But the way that you said that really resonated with me. So, what's some of the ways that you help people not to suffer? Like, where does it start? I know it starts in your mind. Like, how do you help somebody to suffer less?
Well, we have to go into the levels of, so this is quite a layered answer, but essentially it depends on how much they're thinking. Thinking and feeling and emotions are always going to be connected, always, right? So it depends on the meaning they're making of what they're thinking about, how often they're thinking about it, how much rumination they've got going on in their mind, and actually how helpful that rumination is, and what's the purpose of it. Some people, it's habitual. They'll get this thing and they just chew on it because it's a habit, because what you find is even the thing it's not even the issue with the thing they're thinking about, is because there's a space in their life where they haven't fulfilled it. So it depends on the individual, but I would always start with, as a base level, not necessarily talking about positive thoughts and negative thoughts and affirmations and trying to get all that thinking stuff on the table and go, right, let's categorize this like a taxonomy. It's not about that, because you can taxonomize the hell out of your thinking. You'll be there all your life, right? So move that aside and literally just have it all as one ball of stuff, thought. And then you've got helpful thought and you've got thought that's not so helpful. And you got the nature of thought. So I go past the content of the mind. Don't go into what you're thinking about. It's content. Like you've got a book and you've got words, it's all content. If you blur out the book and blur out the words, you're no longer reading the words. You just notice like the brain is full of content, you can get back into the back seat of the brain. You can go into that different level of consciousness where you're just present, but you're not zooming in on the words of the book. When you need to zoom in, come back. Focus on the thing. When you don't need to zoom in, come sit back. That's what the monks do. They're in the, like your PSC, your thinking brain. Think when you need to, then get back. You get present again.
So how much of this is in the book, and how much, like, you know, for all the people listening to this, and I really do want to promote you and your business and your book, because I just think that it has going to have so much positive impact on the world. But how much of this stuff and the framework that you kind of went into, we didn't have enough time to really dig in deep, but how much of it is in the book?
This bit that I'm talking about now is in the awakened phase. So this is where you jump from the consciousness that's in fight or flight or freeze or fornicate in that you know, fawning stage. And so the nervous system is kind of not in its most healthiest, where it's a lower level of consciousness, where you're in kind of like survival mode, and you're being the way you are in survival mode, you know, agitated and aggressive and all, however that manifests for the person. It comes out in different ways. So, and then the second level is when you are not in the mind stuff, but you're able to then think about the nature of the mind and the nature of consciousness and the nature of who you are and the person. Look at the mechanics. So rather than looking at the thing like the phone, the mechanic human being, and what are you made up of? What's creating this experience right now for you to have this experience? Almost take them out of the problem. This is all in section 2 of the book, where they can really look at what is it to be a human, what is it to have an experience, and what is it having a thought, and what is keeping me alive, and what. Answer those questions, and then put yourself back into the environment and go, it probably doesn't really matter that much, does it? That thing isn't really a thing, is it? It was my mind projecting the thing. And actually that conversation we were having where we were both butting heads together, I didn't really understand that there's 8 billion people in the world having 8 billion realities. I just need to understand you a bit more, because my reality is always going to be different to yours, because that's just how we're programmed and created. So it gives you more skills to be human and to be a better leader, because you have more understanding about how you work, and therefore, if I work this way, Trev, you work the same way. So what makes us the same and what makes us different? You have that understanding, essentially, in the second part of the book.
So how do people reach you? Well, before we go there, I actually want to ask you, so if leadership begins kind of at the level of identity, where do you think that most people are the biggest misunderstanding that leaders have comes from? You know, because most of us, and especially, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but especially as men, you know, we go out there and it's, you know, work hard and don't feel anything, and emotions are bad, and you know, tough it out. And so what do you think is one of the biggest misunderstandings in leaders today, and to connect with their identity?
It's relinquishing the role initially. The role comes secondary. The humanity of what makes you is primary, but often people don't understand who they really are, and they mold themselves into a role. The role changes, they mold themselves into the next role. So they almost have like this identity crisis at every level, because they're not really rooted within themselves. So I always get them rooted first, get them plugged back in again, and then the real authentic values come through. And that's what's going to be this steering the ship all the time. So they can wear a different suit, change a different role, grow in the organization. They're anchored in that self-containment and that charisma and that confidence and that magnetism and the ability to stand up and do the thing and say the thing, and all of that is natural rather than you're trying to do that thing. It becomes like an expression of the person, because they know they're rooted within themselves deeply.
I love that. And I can relate to a lot of it. As I was transitioning out of SharePoint, I didn't realize how much my identity had been connected to the role and to the company. And I've done a lot of the inner work that you talk about. And that was pretty recent for me. And I couldn't believe that, like the pain that it caused to actually sort of break that down again. And so there's just so many nuggets of wisdom here in this conversation. How do people get a hold of you?
So I'm on Instagram. So my Instagram handle is I am Gem Dentith. I don't know if you're going to put like a little link in the bottom or anything. Or my email is gem@gemdentith.com. Or my website is gemdentith.com. So if you search for me online, I'm sure you'll find me in one of those areas.
You're easy to find, and I encourage people to do it. I have one final question that I always like to ask. And so, you know, we talk about life, we talk about leadership, we talk about success and identity. You get one conversation, the last conversation that you have, and this is not morbid, for morbid reflection, but you're one of the people that lives to 110 years old, and you've had an amazing life, and you're sitting on the edge of your bed, and you get one last conversation with your kids. What do you tell them right before you go to sleep for the last time? What is the thing you tell them?
Live, literally, like live as fully as you can and do the thing. Life is about living, right? It's not about containment, it's about experience. So I'd say, how much did you live? How much did you love? And just go and do the thing. Yeah, living and loving, that's it. That's all that matters.
I always tell people, no matter how much you love yourself more, and then just spill that out all over everybody in the world. Well, this has been fantastic. I could talk to you literally for the rest of the day, but we do have to wrap up. And I thank you so much for taking the time to come on to Lean Into Lead and to come and have the conversation with me. And for those listening, this is Lean Into Lead, and thank you.
Thank you so much.